as I'm recording this video, I'm going to our normal recording site up the hill here, and now we're stuck on a hill in 4-wheel drive, 4 high, all 4 tires spinning on this clear ice. Great. Let's see if we can even get out of here. Well, that was sketchy. Oh, whatever. We'll go back to the truck. It was cold. It was slippery. You might see me fall, but we're almost back up there. It's like 35 degrees a day out here. I have no idea why it is so slippery. Oh, geez. We got to the truck. Okay, we got to the truck. Now, truck's in. Whoa. Okay, woo, we survived. All right, had to put the truck in 4 low and just creep along, and it wouldn't even go anymore. So I had to get the 2 tires kind of in the ditch so they get on that snow, and then it pulled itself out. But yeah, not fun. At least we're kind of the top hill. As you can see, I was sliding down pretty good there. Yeah, still in 4 low, just kind of creeping up this hill. After we get out here, I'm going to put it back in 2 high and whatever, let it roll. See, now I got to go down that hill to make that, and there's a turn right at that bottom of that hill to turn and to get back down. So I'm going to have to take that really slow and make sure that we don't go slipping off the road down there. All right, okay, so back to it. So we're gonna talk about, I guess, common problems with these Chevys. Okay, to first start off with these common problems with these Chevys, mine doesn't have it, but they do have the check engine light. The check engine light that goes on in the corner there. Mine does have the other common Chevy problem with these clusters is that the service airbag is on. So what happens when these trucks get a couple years old, these lights turn on because just sensors go bad, things like that. This sensor, I know which one this is in the front bumper. Unfortunately, they're still kind of expensive even in the aftermarket. But another thing that goes wrong with these servos inside of these in the cluster here, sometimes it's not the sensor in the truck, it's actually the cluster. So if you have a fluctuating, gas gauge, oil temperature gauge that goes back and forth, or say it won't go all the way to full, or it goes way past the full line, way past the empty line, 9 times out of 10, it's not the sensor in the truck, it's these servos. So GM had a bad run of these clusters for a long time, I guess, before they finally figured it out, because they didn't break down in the first couple of years, it was afterwards. So even after they got to like 06, 07, the last run, they weren't really an issue with the 99s yet until they finally got to, that 10-year mark, and then after that they became a super common problem. These servos just go bad. The only way to fix them is to take them out, desolder them from the board, and then put in the new ones. But after that, this one has had the adjustment done on it already, and it turned out great. So another common problem with these Chevys is the leather on the steering wheel. This leather on the steering wheel goes bad. As you can see, I've replaced mine. I did this custom hack job myself, I guess. It didn't come out too bad. But the top of these leather steering wheels, the leather will get chipped and sun faded and things like that from being under direct heat. Especially if you're down south, it's more prominent the more south you get in the United States. Another thing that goes wrong in these Chevys that's very, very common is these doors. You start hearing wind in these doors. Why? Because every time you open the door and it opens up a little bit too far, it will take the hinge and bend the hinge just a little bit forward, right? Another problem that can be is because these hinge pins have a copper spacer that goes around the pin, right? As that copper wears away, it eventually will tear that copper completely out and then be rubbing just on the pin. What happens is it gives the door a lot of adjustment up or down. It's why another reason is if they don't latch right in the striker down here, if they're not latching right, it's probably because these pins are out or the hinge has gotten bent. Unfortunately, these hinges are welded on, they aren't adjustable. The only way to fix them is actually to drill out the weld, then you can weld a new one on. That has to be done by a body shop unless you really trust yourself. Another thing with these Chevys on the interior, there's just little things like this, like the headliner will start falling down the corners there. That will happen a lot more if you have a truck that is down south, just because of the heat of the day, or you have us up north where we have the opposite. We have the fluctuation between 75 and -30. It can also cause a lot of the contraction and things like that. This truck doesn't have it, but there's a lot of trucks I've seen that crack right here, right there, across here. Just over time, with the contracting and the expanding of this plastic over time goes bad. Another thing is, you guys have probably seen me replace this in one of my videos. If not, go back and take a look at it. These tow haul buttons quit working. And everyone's like, oh, the tow haul button. It's very easy to replace, but it's kind of a pain to replace. You gotta take these covers off, top and bottom, get inside of here, and then you gotta have a big wrench. And what happens is, there's a little wire. It's an orange wire that runs from this button that goes all the way down in here, right? Well, every time you take this and put it in gear, you're pulling that up and down. What happens is this wire in there bends back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And if you know the same thing as a paperclip, you bend a paperclip too many times, it breaks. Same thing with this wire, it does do that. So for the interior, you know, there's just some common things that go on, but you know, nothing is too bad. The biggest thing on these Chevys that everyone will experience if you have a truck with 250, 300,000 miles on it is these ripped seats. They rip right on this line. Chevys, for some reason, had a nice high riser here, which really holds you tight and it feels really good, except, you know, every time you want to try to get over this, you usually slide across it and tearing out one of these seams. These like to tear a lot in these older trucks. The more you drive them, obviously, or I'm not kidding, the bigger the guy that drives it, the more common this will be. Other than that, the interiors on these trucks were pretty good. Those are pretty common problems, but then again, you got to remember, these trucks are now getting 10, 15, you know, even 20 years old now. So you got to remember that it can be common with these things. Now for the outside, we're going to get going and talk about a couple things. Oh, another thing I like to add, written down in my notes. These door handles, they like to break. They when you replace them, I'm going to tell you, don't buy Amazon aftermarket, go buy the OEM, because there's something about them that lasts longer. I've had friends that these handles break on these extended cabs. Then you replace them, and a month later they'll break unless you bought the OEM ones. All right, another thing that happens to these trucks is, we're just gonna get right into it. Rust. These trucks rust out big time. This truck can't tell much. Get inside the fender here, kind of loud with the motor running. But there's a little bit of rust starting, a little bit of crumble starting. I'm gonna tell you something, that these things are now getting so old, they're kind of tell these tailgates like to rust out a little bit here and there. If it starts peeling like this on the outside, you know on the inside it's gone. There's nothing left. I'm gonna pop the hood here. They did have issues with head gaskets in these trucks. This truck has had head gaskets done already, just as preliminary maintenance, because I was in here doing stuff. What happened is with this truck, see these exhausts right here, these things right here, and this motor is running, or was just running, is these bolts right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever they are, the 8 of them. Those bolts like to rust completely off. The heads of them just gone. This truck, when I had the motor part, had the heads off and redone, I put brand new bolts, OEM bolts in, just because I wanted to make sure they were done. As you guys can tell here, there's a exhaust shield here, right? The exhaust shields like to rust out around these holes and literally fall off. There's not one on the other side of the motor, because that's what happened. This is a aftermarket one, not aftermarket, but it's a OEM one that I got off a different truck, just thought it'd look a little better. Another thing too, if you ever done any work with these dipsticks, you'll know this as a fact. Now, these dipstick tubes like to rust out right here, right in the middle there. They crumble and break right there. And so when you ever have to pull these out, 9 times out of 10 they are going to break as you're trying to pull them out, and you'll have half stuck in the motor, half stuck out here. The best way to get that out is to get a steel sheet metal screw, a really long one. Got to run it in there with a drill and then pull on that, give it something good to pull on, it'll come right on out. Another thing wrong with these trucks that unfortunately is not the best is that these things have notorious power steering leaks. For some reason, GM and the aftermarket has not developed a good enough line to hold. They are more prone to blow if they are a snowplow truck, the added weight on the front of the trucks, as well as if you are towing all the time, they can break too. These things are really nice trucks, but you know, they do have their issues here and there. I guess a couple little things on these trucks is that these motors are notorious. These things are awesome. You see everyone nowadays LS swapping everything because these things are great engines. They are one of the best built engines GM has ever came out with. It's why they've stuck with them. They stuck with this motor for a very long time. They still are, just because how notorious. I know people pull these motors out of these trucks with 200, 300,000 miles on them. They put a heads, cam, twin turbo setup, you know, even meth injection and stuff, and run 1,000 horsepower on a block that has 300,000 miles on a stock bottom end. It's crazy. These things are really great trucks for what they are. You know, these trucks run great, drive great, but you know, they have their small little issues, but that does not deter them from being a bad truck. You know, it could be different. These things, I'm gonna go in here now, it's kind of getting cold out here. These things are great because the aftermarket has gotten so big. These things are great because the aftermarket has gotten so big on these trucks that you can literally do whatever you want to them. You need a fender, full stock replacement online. You need a full box side replacement that's online. You need whatever you want. Bigger rims, bigger tires are now being more affordable with these trucks. You can even put a brand new set of rims on these trucks and the same bolt pattern, everything works. Another thing I want to throw in this video, if you have a Silverado, change the damn cabin air filters. When I bought this truck, it was 10 years old, 2012, I think, no, it's 2013 I bought it. So it was 11 or 12 years old when I bought this truck, right? That cabin air filter had never been changed, ever. And it's so gross. Pull it out of there. You tell there must have been a mouse in that vent. There was just hair and dirt and dust and And the guy was wondering why you couldn't get any damn heat out of the vents because the cabin air filter was so plugged. And there's two of them. There's one that goes down, one that slides over and then pull it down. Get them replaced. If you haven't yet, check out, look up a video on YouTube quick and get that done. They are a good truck to buy. Right now they're getting really cheap again, which is awesome. Thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe and follow along with the new build series. Thanks. Bye.